morning, everybody from Arizona. And where are you guys coming from? What's
Chiang Mai.
We are
Nowhere, Chiang Mai. That's where we used to be.
we're in Crystal, Illinois.
Illinois. All right. So good morning, everyone. We are so happy that you've come to join us. In fact, and out of excitement for today's interview, I decided to use this mug, Thailand, in honor of our guest today. And I think Linda has a mug she's got from Chiang Mai.
This is from Chiang Mai. Yep.
There we go. So we're a little bit big into coffee. But in any case, as we do this live stream, I want to encourage you to leave comments or questions. We will get to your questions, even if we've moved on to another subject matter. So don't be afraid to leave them in the chat. Comments and questions do encourage both our guests and me. But especially, looks like Jeannie Markland is
this is our daughter.
Hi, Mom and Dad. That's awesome.
Hi,
So
we
have some relatives, we have some friends, we have some probably former partners, and hopefully others too. But do let us know you're here. We'd love to hear from you because this conversation is also inclusive of you who are watching, and asking questions is a great way to draw out more of the stories that they have to share. So we have a lot. They've assured me they have a lot of stories to share today. So we're going to jump right into it a bit. Let's start with when did it become clear to you, to both of you, that you were to serve overseas cross-culturally? Share that process with us.
Well, let me start and Jean will jump in because I felt from the time I was just young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, we'd have missionaries come to our church, and I always felt God just tugging at my heart that this is what he wanted me to do. But as I grew and actually I did have a chance to serve a bit, slightly cross-culturally when I was in college, went to South America with the Youth for Christ teen team, and that was a great experience, and met Jean in college, and we got married, and with no plans at that point to go overseas as missionaries. But every time we had a missionary come to our church, which was First Baptist in Marysville,
And it was often.
I would say to Jean, doesn't that sound great? Wouldn't you like to do that? And he would say,
No.
no, not really. So then now I'll let him tell his part of the story.
So because we had lots of missionaries there, our pastor was a former missionary in Africa, and he was keen to get everybody in the congregation to go to the mission field. I don't know what he was going to do after that, but never mind. But we had week-long mission conferences at least once a year. And during one of these, I was standing by one of the speakers' display tables, and we were just chatting. And he found out that we were teachers, and he said, he was from Faith Academy in the Philippines. And he said, why don't you come and help us at Faith Academy? And I'd been in church all my life. I knew how to answer this question. I said, I'll pray about it.
Yeah.
I really had no intention of actually doing that. But by the end of the week, God convinced me, and Linda didn't need any convincing, that maybe I should say yes to this. So we went forward at the end of the conference and told the whole church.
Bad idea.
Now you're committed.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So that was what happened with us in terms of changing direction a little bit.
Awesome.
I think up until that time, we didn't realize that as teachers, really, that there was a place for us in missions. We pretty much thought, doctors, nurses, preachers, those were the missionaries, not teachers. And we found out through meeting, this was Chuck Church years ago, who was the librarian at Faith, that, hey, there may be a place for us.
Mhm.
Yeah, the mission field is a lot broader than a lot of people think, and especially today. There's a lot of opportunities for teachers and for all kinds of people. So tell me, how long did it take for you guys to raise support as teachers?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that we first went to Pakistan as short-term workers. So this was 1971, they were MAC workers, Missionary Assistance Corps. And we found out that there was an opening at Murray Christian School in Pakistan. And through telegrams, basically our Northwest representative, cables back and forth, found out there were openings. At that time, I was teaching second grade and Jean was a music teacher. And 6 weeks later, we were there. Some of them didn't really even know we were coming. But at that time, our church, Marysville again, First Baptist Church, paid for our ticket, our round trip ticket. And at that time, Murray Christian School had a program where they could pay financially just living expenses. And so that's how we first got to the field. So we were there 18 months as short-term workers. And at that time then we returned to the US and were appointed with WorldVenture as, at that time, CBFMS, as career missionaries in January of 1973. And we already had, our church in Marysville had already committed support to us before we were ever appointed. And then I think it was about 18 months before we then arrived on the field again. So in October of 1974, we returned to Pakistan. So about 18 months. But we also had, again, it was a time, we were from the Pacific Northwest. There were a lot of conservative Baptist churches. We had the office in the Northwest, did all our scheduling for us. We didn't have any children, and so we were pretty much open to wherever, pretty much all along the I-5 corridor in Washington and Oregon and Northern California. Many churches wanted people to come who had been on the field already. So as MAC workers, as short-term workers, we had that experience and were able to share a bit of our experiences already. And so we did end up with, I think originally we had 26 supporting churches.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot. Yeah.
So in that time of support raising and short-term missions trips and all that, what did God teach you in preparation for serving in Pakistan and later Thailand?
Well, one of the things that we learned, or I learned especially, was how to meet people. I don't easily meet people. It's not my general character or personality. I'll let Linda do the talking if I can. However, we would go to conferences at churches, sometimes for a week, sometimes for only a day, and we had a display that we could set up, and we could just stand there and talk to people. Usually I was expected to preach, So I got something ready and did it. Lord, you use this because I'm not a preacher. Anyway, however, that's one of the big things that we learned. I learned how to play the part of doing this thing, even though that wasn't my natural bent. So that was a great help to me.
I think one of the biggest things was the importance of having prayer partners, prayer supporters. Often, I think we were told that and kind of understood it in our heads, but I think once we got on the field, to realize how important it was to have people praying for us. I remember one instance when I was going through a particularly hard time. This was when we were in Pakistan, and I think I might have been doing some schoolwork at that time. I was working on a master's degree kind of remotely. And anyway, I was having a hard time. And at that time, we didn't have email. We didn't have, it was letters. And sometimes it took several weeks for us to get a letter. But there was one particular woman whom I had never met actually personally, but we had children, I think, that were about the same age. And she would send little gifts and things we had 3 girls, for our girls. And we just kind of corresponded back and forth. Well, I was going through this pretty difficult time in my life. And I don't even really remember what it was about in particular, but a few weeks later, I had a letter from this woman, and she said, this is a little hard to tell, it just brings tears to my eyes, because she said, I was driving home after taking my kids to school, and the Lord just impressed upon me that I needed to pray for you. So I pulled over to the side of the road and prayed for you on this particular day and time. It was like, wow. Only God could do that. And boy, if I ever impressed upon me how important it was that people were praying for us.
Yeah, that is quite powerful. I tell people all the time that if you're going to pray for someone, let them know, because you have no idea how God's going to use it during that time. You wanted to say something?
Did you want?
Nope.
You look like you're about to say something, but so you're in your first couple years of serving, and that is in Pakistan, right? Was the first couple years? Okay. First couple years in Pakistan. And what did you find the most challenging, and how did you overcome it?
Before that, can I just say that
Sure. Yeah.
When we first arrived in Pakistan, not too long after we had arrived, and got a little bit settled in the routine of what we were doing at that point, which was mostly my teaching private lessons to music students and Linda teaching second grade and a band at that point. I had this feeling of, yes, I've arrived where I belong. Now that wasn't Linda's story at that point. He was very homesick and didn't like the smell of the food when we were walking into the hostel and stuff. But there were some challenges that way, getting just acclimatized to the school and to the new. But I very definitely had this feeling of, this is where God wants me. This is where I belong. So.
And I think, yes, it was rather, looking back, humorous, since I was the person who really was pushing for us to go in the first place. After we got there, I was sick a lot. and it was stomach things. It was the spicy food. And every time we would walk into the hostel, which is the dorm where we were staying to begin with, I could smell the kerosene cooking. That was there at that point. They cooked on kerosene. Just the smell made me sick to my stomach. So that was hard. And then also, I think one of the biggest, realities, I guess, that we faced was that missionaries are not perfect either. And those missionaries that we put up on the pedestal really don't belong there. And mostly they're just real the way we are. And given that we only had 6 weeks to get ready to go to Pakistan, we really didn't know much about Pakistan. We didn't know about the culture. We didn't really know about how to dress. And of course, I was a teacher at that point. We never wore pants. We never wore long pants. We had to wear dresses. Those were the eras of mini skirts. So guess what I was wearing? Guess what I brought? That was not appropriate in Pakistan. And sadly, I experienced a lot of kind of gossip behind my back. And that was very disappointing. We got to Murray in the summertime when a lot of the missionaries were in Murray, the missionary moms, to get out of the heat of the plains and take their children out of boarding. And it was pretty disappointing. But I do want to say that many of those people, those women especially, became some of my dearest friends and supporters later on, as we got to know each other and understand one another, and people who came alongside me and helped me to adjust to the culture and appropriate ways of dressing. So those were some of the challenges. But then as we eased in through that, the first thing that people would ask us, this was so interesting. One of the first things when they'd meet us, are you coming back? Are you coming back? That's what they wanted to know. We'd just gotten there. Are you coming back? Are you staying? And we came to realize later that for missionary kids in school, one of the most important things was continuity and people who would stay and get to know them. And I was so grateful that the Lord worked in my heart that I could eventually say, yes, we are, we are. But yeah, we had some big challenges that first year. One of them was a war between India and Pakistan. We went in June of 1971. And in December, we heard the news. We were getting ready that there would possibly be a war. The school ended up sending students home early. We closed school early for the winter break. And then the war broke out between India and Pakistan. And that eventually became, that was East Pakistan at the time. Now, then West Pakistan, we were in West Pakistan, they were in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And so we made it through our first war in that only really lasted a couple months, and we were never in any danger. But that was a challenge. And a challenging experience. So yeah, in our first couple of years, those were some of our biggest challenges.
Wow, that's a big one for your first couple of years. So in building a financial team to serve in missions, tell us about the sweet friendships and connections that remain today, and how did those relationships evolve?
We developed close friendships between ourselves and a couple of people at Linda's home church in Vancouver, Washington, and then at another church in Vancouver that we attended when we were on our deputation, furlough, whatever we want to call it. And those have lasted. They were mainly with people of our own age who we got to know, and so that was wonderful. And we could even to this day, if we see those people or happen to be in the neighborhood and link up, it's like these are friends and we've never kind of been apart. It's just we just take off where we were, and that happened a number of times, especially with the churches that we got to more often because we tended to be settled in the area when we were on a home assignment.
And also in Yakima, Washington, which is actually central Washington, so it was a little bit off the I-5 corridor. Jean is from central Washington, so we have roots there as well. And in one of our churches, Westside Baptist, we ended up being there for an extended period of time after 9/11, and got to know people even better. And when we go back there, we meet and we have lunch together, and with people that we were in choir. We joined the choir then, and we were with them in that. And I was just thinking about the last September, a year ago, we were out in the Northwest visiting, and we were in the church I grew up in Vancouver, and we just were there for a Sunday service, just as ourselves. And the pastor at the end of the service called us to the front and called people around us to pray for us. And this was we're retired now. We're not in that ministry anymore, but they still had that connection with us and that desire to pray for us. So yeah, we have still many sweet connections. When we see them, it's like we've never been away.
That is beautiful. And I've heard those stories a lot with a lot of longtime workers where the partnership just changes and evolves into this deep friendship that just,
Yes.
and they never forget you, and
Right.
they constantly keep in contact. And that's the beautiful part of raising support as a global worker. Tell me now, as you're overseas, you're either in Pakistan or you're in Thailand, but what were the challenges of raising a family cross-culturally, and how did you overcome that?
Well, being in Pakistan and having 3 daughters was somewhat challenging, but I think in some ways we felt like we didn't know any different. Our 3 girls, well, two out of our 3 girls were born in Pakistan. And our middle daughter, Bethany, was born on a very short home assignment. And in fact, we stopped on the way home from the hospital. We stopped to get her passport picture taken after she was born. So our 3 girls all went to Murray Christian School. They all graduated from Murray School. And so I think in many ways, we didn't know any differently in terms of raising a family, because that's where we were pretty much raising them. I think the most challenging thing for us and for them was more coming back to the States, was the cross-cultural challenge. I just asked the girls just recently, well, in fact, when we were looking at these questions, I asked, and one of the things that one of our daughters told us was that the most difficult thing for her was coming back to the States. And part of it was that the expectation that missionaries were these super spiritual people that never had any problems, and their children were basically expected to be perfect and be the same, and not being able to be real with people, to share the difficulties of returning to a culture that they really didn't know. I think we were in the States with our girls for the most in 47 years, 3 total years, where we actually spent a year in the States 3 times. So the other times were all short furloughs. So they didn't go to school. They only, I think, twice did our girls actually spend a year in school in the States. So yes, to me, I think they probably would agree that it was not so much cross-culturally in Pakistan, but cross-culturally coming back to the States. And probably the hardest thing for me as a mom was leaving them thousands of miles away before the era basically of emails and easy communication. That was probably the hardest thing, I think. Well, and just for girls in general, teaching, I don't know that we really ever talked to them about this, but learning to look men in the eye.
Not to.
Yeah, well,
it's not to in Pakistan,
but once they got back to America, being able to look men in the eye and not be looking down. I still have to, of course, my husband walks very fast anyway. So I'm usually behind him. So, but in Pakistan, it was pretty normal, to walk behind. So, yeah, that was probably, as I said, I think probably they would say their best. They wouldn't trade the life that they had in Pakistan for anything. I know that that our girls really feel like their heart homes are Pakistan. Yeah.
That is very interesting. And so you were, so you served with us about 47 years?
Yes, we did.
So go ahead.
We were 31 years. We were 31 years in Pakistan and then 16 years in Thailand.
So tell me about what caused that transition between Pakistan and Thailand. And then I'll ask my other questions if you answer.
Well,
you start and then.
Okay. Yeah. You can tell who the talker is in this group, in this couple. But anyway, we had a year furlough in 2001. Our daughter Angela graduated from high school. We decided that was a good time. At that point in time, I was now the high school principal at Murray School, and really felt, even though I had been working on a master's, I really wanted to go to school and get my master's. So we spent 2001 in Washington State, and I went to Central Washington University and completed a master's in educational administration. We went back to Pakistan in August of 2001, and we all know what happened on September 11th, 2001. So Murray School closed, and we returned to the U.S. And that's when we were in the U.S. for an extended period of time. So we were getting ready the Murray School was reopening. I had some issues. I ended up having surgery on my jaw, so we were not able to go back right away back to Pakistan. And then our daughter Bethany got engaged, and they decided they would like to get married before we returned to Pakistan. So school was opening again on the 29th of July, 29th of July, 2002. And our daughter Bethany's wedding was July 27th. And so we decided, well, okay, we've been gone this long. Another week or so is not going to hurt. We are going to give ourselves a few days after her wedding before we go back. So we began to try to make reservations to return to Pakistan. And we could not get a reservation. We thought to ourselves, who's going to Pakistan right now? Why are we not able to get a reservation? So we were not able to get a reservation until August the 7th. And which was, it was longer than we wanted. So then we were in Wheaton, Illinois at that point, where Josh and Bethany were getting married and staying with friends of ours. And the morning of August the 5th, the phone rang early morning. It was probably 4 a.m. at our friend's house, who they happened to be with another organization. They may be online right now with Team, and they were actually good friends of ours, but they weren't home. So we answered the phone, and it was someone calling from Pakistan for our friend Dave, who said, can you tell us how to get a hold of Dave? There's been an incident in Pakistan. Well, he didn't say any more, and we just basically said, well, we think this is how you can get a hold of him. We'll try to let him know that you're trying to get a hold of him. So I said right away to Jean, something's happened at Murray. I knew it. I'd had a dream earlier.
Which I poo-pooed.
Which he said, where actually our school driver said to us, don't come back. But this was, so this had happened earlier. And so when we got this phone call, I said to Jean, something's happened at Murray. Well, we then discovered and found out it was actually we turned on the TV, and there was actually news on BBC that Murray Christian School had been attacked by terrorists. So there were 6 armed terrorists who came into the school, and God protected amazingly during that time. But there were 6 Pakistanis who were killed during that attack. None of the teachers or students or staff, expat staff, were killed, but as you can imagine, they were locked down for hours, waiting for help. And so that's basically when, after the terrorist attack on the school, they brought in crisis counselors then to the school to meet with the staff and students. And their recommendation was that they keep the students together in a safe place to finish the school year. So
in the meantime, we're in the States trying to figure out what to do. And we finally went back out to Washington State, and we're able to stay there closer to our families and wait the time out. Now, while we're doing this, Linda can go ahead and tell you how we ended up in Thailand.
So the school director, along with some actually former staff members, actually went to Thailand and went to Chiang Mai looking for a place where they could have school. This was basically they were looking for 7th through 12th grade, basically, to be able to finish the school year. And remember, the school had really just started. So through just amazing series of events where missionaries in Thailand and other people were so helpful. They were able to find a place in Chiang Mai. The Thai First Church, or the community church, offered for the school to use some of their rooms to have classes. And then Chiang Mai International School actually offered or agreed to sponsor people with visas, and which we had to have. The education department in Thailand is very hands-on, very strict about their requirements, which was quite a lot different than Pakistan. Anyway, so in September, I think, about the 19th of September, we flew directly to Chiang Mai, and we started school. It was like camping out in this, in the church there. And some of our students were able to take some advanced placement classes at CMIS, but mostly we ran our own classes for the rest of that school year. And in the meantime, Chiang Mai was a place where there were a lot of support people there for missionaries. It was a place where people, organizations had set up a counseling center specifically for missionaries. So we had counselors that would come into the school usually about once a week and meet with all of us and talk with us. We had one of the most difficult things was in October of that year, Thailand has a festival where they, Loi Krathong, where they tend to set off a lot of fireworks. And our school was had a little, what we called a little street that went behind the school. And during the school day, sometimes kids would go along and they just set off a string of firecrackers. And we saw that, our students would cry, staff would cry, kids wanted to crawl under their desks. It just took them through that experience again at MCS that they had experienced in Pakistan. So even though we often said, why did God keep us out of it? Why were we not there? And part of it, anyway, we believe was that God wanted us there God wanted people there who hadn't gone through that, who we were able to support the others who had. We were able to fill in for them in classes when they couldn't teach, when things got too difficult. So we really believe that's one of the reasons, at least, why God kept us out of that situation. So do you want to hear then how we ended up at Grace from there?
Yes, please do.
Let me carry on with that.
Go ahead.
You can rest.
Yeah.
So one of the nice things that happened is that Chiang Mai University, which is a Christian university, and it was right near where we were as well. We got to know some of those people, but they were putting on the Messiah for Christmas, and they invited any of us who wanted to go along and sing. And we thought, oh yeah, that's what we would enjoy doing that. So jump in with whatever.
Well, what I was going to say is, before that, we had meantime, the school board, the members of the Murray Christian School Board were back in Pakistan mostly meeting. and trying to decide whether or not to reopen the school. Well, that the next year, and we really felt very strongly that that would just not be a good idea. People were just too traumatized. The students, to put them back in that situation again, we felt like was not the right thing to do. So we had decided personally that we would not go back, even if they reopened. So we said, well, what will we do? What will we do? Well, that's when we asked ourselves, well, let's look back. What did we feel who did we feel that God called us to originally? And we said, we feel very strongly that God has called us to missionary kids. Though that was to be our mission field, was missionary kids. So we decided, okay, that means we're going to need to go back to the States. We're going to need to find another school that needs, at that point, a high school principal and a music teacher. Two very specific job positions. So we figured we'd need to go back and raise more support. And so that led up to back to singing in the Messiah.
Yeah. So Linda's a soprano. I was a tenor. She sat where the sopranos were sitting. Right next to her was a lady called Jenny, who Linda got to know because she gets to know anybody that's sitting next to her. And Jenny was the same way. So, but Jenny was the elementary principal at Grace International School. And Linda had told her a little bit about who we were and what we were. And she said during the discussion, we need a high school principal and we need a band teacher for next year. This was December, so it was pretty close. Anyway, we thought, that's interesting. So we, over time, we got in contact with our mission authorities, and our director happened to come and see us in Chiang Mai, and he went out and checked out Grace International School. And he says, we don't have any other missionaries in Thailand, which we knew. But we think this is a good place for you and you ought to pursue it. So making a long story short, we visited and we interviewed and whatever we needed to do. And the next school year, that's where we were. Go ahead, jump in now.
No, that's, and it really was pretty amazing. Grace, at that point, Grace International School had about 400 students. They were a new school, 3 years old. They were just working on accreditation. And I know we had not too many years previously, we had gone through that at Murray with Association of Christian Schools International. And I had a friend from a colleague from Murray School said to me, Linda, I can't believe you're going to a school where you have to go through accreditation again. So we went through that probably 4 times in the time we were, including the last year we were at Grace was our accreditation. So Grace Internet, we should say that Chiang Mai, I guess we mentioned before that Chiang Mai was a real center for mission support, but also Chiang Mai is within a 2.5-hour plane flight of a third of the world's population. So there are many missionaries who come to Chiang Mai and live in Chiang Mai, and often so that the husbands can travel to some of those restricted access countries around, and then make their base in Chiang Mai, and the kids could go to school. So Grace was started so that those families would have a place for their kids, and that they would have an opportunity too. They wanted to have a extension resources program so that they could serve missionaries also who were homeschooling their children further out. And they wanted a good music program, and they wanted a tech ed program. And so they really wanted to serve and keep missionaries on the field. And so it really was kind of a perfect fit for us. And Gene can tell you how he felt once he got there.
Yeah, well, this goes back a whole long ways. When I graduated from college, I first taught in a junior high school. Not band. I didn't get to choose the band. I did general music, which you can imagine junior high kids in general music, not too excited. I tried to, get them interested, but anyway, I had limited success. And then for the next 3 years, I was teaching elementary music. That isn't the direction I thought I was going. I wanted to be a high school band teacher. Well, Chiang Mai, a whole lot of years later, was the first time that I got to be a high school band teacher. And I said, God is giving me the desire of my heart back then. Now, kind of at the end of our lives in mission work and careers, I get to do that. So for 15 years then, I got to start from 11 students in my first band, and I think 4 or 5 of them were flutes. That was interesting. Anyway, to when we got done, I was teaching 6th grade band, middle school band, high school band. By then we had a jazz band going, was doing that. A couple of different times I led the choir when the choir director was on furlough or gone for some reason. That was the best time of my life in the sense of teaching what I thought I wanted to teach all of those years.
So how did you see answered prayer in your years of serving both in Pakistan and in Thailand?
Yes. Boy. I think part of it was just obviously in direction, because when we went to Pakistan, I was 24, Jean was 26. We went to a place where basically, even though the culture was very different and difficult, we were living on a mission compound. We didn't really have to worry a whole lot about life, even though living was really difficult in the sense of water shortages and electricity being off and all of that. But so when we moved to Thailand, I was 55 and Jean was 57. It was a little different for us there. It was the first time that we had to find a place on our own to live, although we had a lot of help with that. It was very different, although living in itself was a lot easier. Life, we had good air conditioning. We had pretty much what we needed. Living in Thailand was a lot, in a sense, easier than living in Pakistan. But answers to prayer in terms of health, we also, I guess one of the things we didn't mention along the way is that in 2007, we were back in the States for, again, just the summertime. Our daughter Jeannie was getting married, and we were back for that. And our daughter Angela, our third daughter, was there. They were in Wheaton at the time, and Angela became 3 weeks after Jeannie's wedding. Angela became very sick, and a week later, she died very suddenly. We of course it was obviously a blow and a huge shock, and but to see the help and the support that we got from those around us was pretty incredible. And we ended up, actually, I guess probably this, in a sense, this isn't, it is answers to prayer, because boy, people jumped in. We didn't really at that point know where the money was going to come from, even for her burial and funeral and that sort of thing. And yet the money just started to pour in. We had dear friends who paid for her burial plot. And by the end of, so that was in July 6th was when she passed away. By December, we had enough money. We had co-signed some of her college loans. And so we were responsible to repay those. By the end of the year, we were able to pay those totally off. But also, after her death, we decided, we went back out to Yakima. We stayed for a while. We decided that there was not a lot of point in continuing to stay in the States once our older daughters were married and were working, and we felt like there wasn't a lot that we needed to do for them at that point. So we went back to Chiang Mai for the beginning of the school year. And there was so much support there. One of the things that it just still amazes me is about it was only maybe a week or so after we got back, plants started appearing at my office. And often there would be a note along with that saying, "We're praying for you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you. We loved." Angela, our daughter, actually had spent more than a year with us in Thailand, so people knew her as well. So anyway, then every week for that entire year, from August, plants appeared at my office or at home. Sometimes there was a note, or there was always a note, but not often. There was no name. So there would just be, I remember one of our parents said, "I want to come to your house, and I have a bush that I want to plant that attracts butterflies." And we said, "Oh, well, we could have somebody plant that." And she said, No, I want to do this for you." And so she came and got down on her hands and knees and dug in the dirt and planted that plant for us. And we realized just how much love and support and prayer support there was for us. I don't know that we would have ever known that if we hadn't served and had that broad network of friends and colleagues. So.
Amen. So what would you tell in your 47 years, looking back, what would you tell your 20-something-year-old selves going into missions that you have learned since then?
I think we kind of always knew it, but I would emphasize God is faithful.
Yeah.
He'll always be there for support, for help, whatever you need. He's there. He's leading and guiding. He will not leave you. He's there.
Yeah. And take it a step at a time, I think I would say. And that's hard for me. My girls and others will tell you that I am a planner. I want to know what's happening. I want to know. And probably that's why I was an administrator. But also, let God lead you just one step at a time. He will open and close those doors, but just be faithful into whatever he has for you. And don't worry. I'm speaking to myself about that too. God is faithful. And for us to be able, on our last, we called it our farewell tour when we visited our supporting churches, Gene's sermon his talk was all about remembering. Don't forget, remember God's faithfulness. And that's what I would say. God is good. God is faithful.
Amen to that. And as we close in on our time, tell us, since you've retired, what is we talk about at WorldVenture, we talk about when our workers retire, they don't really retire, at least it doesn't seem that way. They seem to go into a new season of ministry. So what does your day-to-day look like these days in your new season, being back home or back in the US?
Well,
yeah, a lot of it centers around our daughters and our grandkids who are in the area, and that's why we're here. That's why we're not out in Washington State where our families are. I mean, our
siblings.
But anyway, so it revolves around going to their concerts, going to their, if they're whatever they're involved in, we try to be there when we can. Also, I've gotten involved in the Joliet American Legion band, so once a week at least, I'm on a Tuesday night, I'm there with the band learning our next series of songs that we're going to be doing. And we're very busy in the summer, especially playing at all kinds of different events. So that takes a fair amount of time and keeps me focused on playing my trombone and making music with other people who also have gray hair. Not all of them do, but some of them do.
Yeah. Gene has also taught our grandkids music lessons. He's especially our ones that are close by. Our granddaughter Amy's a senior and plays clarinet, and Gene basically started her out on the clarinet, and her brother Caleb is starting 9th grade, and Gene pretty well has started him out on the trumpet. One of the best things now is that they're to the point where they say, "Granddad, we need a lesson. We need help us with our. We've got some new music and band. Help us." And
that's kind of fun.
It is fun, and I think in our church we've gone to Mission Bible Church, which is in Minooka, Illinois. And we have participated in leading worship. We've been on a worship team there. We anticipate joining, we haven't actually done this yet, but joining the missions committee to really work more closely and encourage missions in our church, even though they do well in supporting missionaries, but we want to do more of that. So probably our biggest ministry right now is, in a sense, to our family, but as I said, Gene with the band, and I'm his biggest supporter. So that's yeah, that's go ahead.
As we close in our time, how can people be praying for you both?
We keep looking for people who know us. That's probably the biggest hurdle that we've had being back in the States. There are very few people, including in our home church that we attend now, who know us. And people tend to talk about a life in missions, and people's eyes very quickly glaze over and go to something else to talk about. And so we're very, very, very slowly are we making any progress with people who really know who we are and anything about us, other than we have been on the worship team. We come to church. They see us at church every Sunday, or some people do. Anyway, so that's kind of hard. Yeah.
Your prayers for basically deeper connections with people, and
Yeah.
so you don't get the eyes glazing over in your conversations. So you can share all parts of you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we've got a couple comments as we close. I think you're going to be quite encouraged. We have Kayleen Button. She says, "Love you, big brother," and you too, Linda. Bethany Carney, thanks for your faithfulness and service, Mom and Dad. I may or may not have cried through your whole interview. Sean Fooch. Okay, thanks for sharing. We loved having you as neighbors in Chiang Mai. And Bill and Nancy McComb, also some of our alumni retirees. I'm so thankful that you are soaking in your adult children and grandchildren. You are their only Fisher grandparents, and those relationships are so biblical and healthy. My viewpoint in these present days of culture is that a solid multi-generational family loving and supporting each other and enjoying each other is a very bright light and witness for Christ. And we got Sylvia Hall that sending their love. They enjoyed hearing your stories.
That's my brother and his wife.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. And if you're watching this when it's no longer live and you have further questions, you can leave your comments or your questions in the comment section, and I'll make sure that Jean and Linda get those questions, and we'll get an answer for you on their behalf. You got their prayer requests, so make sure that you're praying for them, those deep connections. And if you happen to go to their church, might I suggest introducing yourself after service and staying a few extra minutes, maybe even inviting them to lunch to get to know them on a deeper level. So I want to thank you, Jean and Linda. Your stories that you shared today were amazing. An amazing 47 years in 2 different countries, impacting students and impacting your family and impacting other people and even your partners. That is, praise God, an amazing thing to his glory. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So everyone, we will be having another live stream next week. So go to worldventure.com/events and you'll be able to see what's coming up. And don't forget, prayer is the most important thing. And we have our monthly prayer coming up at the beginning of September for unreached people groups. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.